Welcome everyone to our November show. This show is about the Enrique Camaren Award that Elks give out every year. This year, our award went to a local police officer and his companion.
Open our hearts, free every soul. The fear inside, you must let it go. Oh, that monster, before it conquers you. Yeah, we all have demons, we fight every day. You get knocked down, but the bell hasn't rang, so keep going. Just stay focused when life seems hopeless. Before life passes you by, you must, like a bird with broken wings always. You've got to reach for the stars. It might seem far. Ooh, don't stop. You gotta try. Oh, 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 you gotta try. Never stop dreaming, even away. Nothing can stop you from winning this race, so keep going. Just stay focused. Yeah, I am the tiger, I own the prize. Every storm is with the rainbow in the sky. You are golden. If no one else noticed, don't stop, keep going. Before life passes you by, you must, like a bird with broken wings always. You gotta reach for the stars. It might seem far. Ooh, don't stop. You gotta try. Oh, 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 you gotta try. You gotta try. All you got to do is try. Oh, you gotta 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 try. You gotta try. All you got to do is try. You gotta try.
I think the biggest piece of advice I have for someone going through addiction or thinking about going to rehab is being honest with yourself. Don't be afraid to get help. I think that's the biggest stigma that we're trying to erase is don't be afraid to ask for help.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shane Wagner. I'm this year's president of the Watertown Elks Lodge. I'd like to welcome everyone to our third annual Enrique Camaren Awards banquet. Tonight, although all first responders are heroes, we will be focused on honoring 3 firefighters/EMTs and 2 police officers. Watertown Elks has been serving the community for over 120 years through their youth, veterans, and community events, especially focusing on sharing drug awareness information throughout our schools and community. Before we begin, I would like everyone to please join me and stand for the benediction led by our chaplain, Doris Freedom.
Let us pray. Almighty Father, we ask that you look favorably upon this first responders, police officers, and firefighters, their families and friends, and ask your blessing for their lives and safety. We thank them for being here when we need them and hope we never do. Bless this food of which we are about to partake and the people who made it possible. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please have a seat and enjoy the program, and thank you for being here for this important event. Next, we have Greg Breeze, one of our past presidents and committee chairman. Oh, let's go to Greg. Paul has a song for us, and then we'll bring up Greg Breeze. Please stand for the Star Spangled Banner. National anthem. Next, we have Greg Breeze, one of our past presidents and committee chairman for Guitars for Vets, with a brief description of this new charter program.
That's awesome. We got the flag blocking it. No, I know you don't want to see me. I absolutely agree. My name is Greg Breeze. I'm a member here in Watertown. Watertown Elks Lodge, 2 years ago, my wife actually ran into somebody at Summerfest and talked to him. His name is Patrick. Great person. And Patrick has a personal mission. He is working on the same thing that the Elks were working on. He was very concerned at the time. We had 22 deaths per day of veterans, and the vast majority of those deaths were being because of suicide. There was a huge issue. Terry and myself, we started talking to Pat, and we worked through the process, and I'm proud to say that the Watertown Elks Lodge is the very first Elks Lodge to have a Guitars for Veterans charter. It took a long time to work through this, and what that means, Guitars for Vets was designed in a way where they would have musicians go and teach veterans how to play guitars. It was designed to go to veterans' homes, to administrations, and to go and help the veterans who were basically in a hospital setting to find something to help them get through the day and have it released. Fortunately, Patrick and that national program, they are visionary and they agreed with us. We now have in our lodge people, like you just heard, a wealth of talent and musicians, but they come out and they go to the veteran and we give them one-on-one attention. They also allowed us to expand it to include first responders and hospital staff. So police, fire, EMS, anybody who would like to learn how to play a guitar. We come out and we do it anonymously. We sit down with them and we teach them how to play a guitar. It doesn't matter if they learn to play the guitar. It's an elk going out and spending time with somebody and helping them through the day. It is one of the most amazing programs ever. Right now we have 3 students. We have 5 teachers. I'd encourage each and every one of you to think about that. There's no reason not to explore learning to play guitar because we all have our mental troubles and our mental challenges. And within the first responder community and within our veterans for certain, there is a huge need. So here in Watertown, we are set up in a way where we will be doing this for the foreseeable future. And I really, in my opinion, I believe we're going to be an agent of change and we're going to help at least 100 people over the next 10 years. Thank you. Yeah. So I wanted to introduce some of the talent I'm talking about. These are 2 gentlemen that volunteer their time to go out and teach guitar with people on the spot. Wayne Arbogast and Paul Dominguez. They've been up here, they support the music program up here all the time. Wayne wrote himself a song, I'd say about a decade ago. I remember when he introduced it to me and I said, shit, we gotta play that. We gotta play that. So Wayne, play that.
Oh, all right. Never made it back.
honor you with love and pride. We remember those who gave their lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Hello, everyone. My name is Christine Crone, and I am the State and Local Elks Drug Awareness Chairman. It is my pleasure to welcome you all, and after your delicious dinner served by Ms. Rob's Catering, we will be giving out awards to 3 MTs and the Enrique Camaren Award to a team of police officers. Please enjoy your meal. I'd like to introduce DE Agent, Assistant Special Agent for the Milwaukee Department, John J.D. McGarry. And he'd like to do a little presentation for you about the drugs in our area.
Good evening, thank you. Please enjoy your meal while I talk over everybody. My name is John McGarry. Yep, that's me. I cover the state of Wisconsin from Milwaukee. We have agents in Madison, Green Bay. There's approximately 100 men and women, special agents and task force officers from around the state and other federal agencies working diligently to keep the state of Wisconsin safe. They're doing a great job, but there is a tidal wave that is going to crest over us if it hasn't already. So some folks who maybe heard me talk about this thing have said, oh, this is fear-mongering. But I think for this crowd it's not, because the work that Chris does is really like the first and almost the last stopgap between the evil that's pouring across our border and our young people. And I firmly believe, especially this week being Red Ribbon Week, if we can't address the threat in our schools, our elementary schools, our middle schools, and our high schools, while high school students are still listening to the message from adults, then we've lost the battle. It's not enough just for the folks that are doing the law enforcement work to go out there and make arrests. This has to be a total effort from the community, as you all are doing, law enforcement, and a whole government thing. So, enough of my opine. Let's talk about, if this is on. Where's the idea? That guy. I think it just stalled out because of how long it's got to answer. It was going to be decent, I promise. There we go. There we are. All right. Okay, so I'm not a microphone guy, but I'll carry it around here. So the drug problem here in Wisconsin is one we feel in communities at the local level, whether it be through fatal overdoses, through property crimes committed by folks who are attempting to break into cars. I'm sure the chief and the cannon officer here could speak all about the local impact of that stuff. But it comes to our shores really because of one country right now. And I'm going to demonize China because that is where every precursor chemical that is making fentanyl and methamphetamine that is getting into the U.S. across our southwest border, it's coming from particular regions of China. You'll see there's this area up here. I know it gets small as you get further back, but Guangzhou right here is essentially the chemical capital of the entire world. There's thousands of factories that manufacture chemicals both illicitly and legitimately, and it is those chemicals that are making their way to Mexico, as I'll talk in this presentation, and in turn being converted into fentanyl and ending up as pills on our streets and overdosing our young people. And you can see that China's the hub. If you put your thumb on one problem or you squeeze the toothpaste tube, it doesn't go away, because all these other countries listed up here are also have illicit chemical manufacturing behaviors. And you can see that China is it's always the big bear, the big giant, the big dragon, whatever people they want to call it. But the problem with regulating this on the Chinese side is some of these chemicals, or a percentage of these chemicals, are also needed for the manufacturing of legitimate pharmaceuticals. And how is the Chinese government separating between illicit and illegitimate? Or how is anybody that may intercept these chemicals between China and the Pacific coast of Mexico discriminating between these two things? These precursors that's our law enforcement lingo for chemicals that are converted into an illicit drug. And you can see that the common flows of precursors across the Pacific, because that's where the threat is, are coming from these regions of China and either getting into Canada, into the United States through common ports of entry, Los Angeles, Seattle, Long Beach Terminal, or through down here in Mexico. Manzanillo Port in Mexico, which is controlled by CGNG. Has anybody heard of CGNG in the media? Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generacion. They're led by a guy named Menchito. He essentially has his own special forces army running large portions of Mexico. I recommend you go Google it. You're gonna have to take off your safe search settings, and you shouldn't watch it on a computer that any adolescents would have access to. A brutal army and protocol they put together there. But this area here, right there, that's Manzanillo, Mexico, the port there. It's under the control of CGNG and not the local government or even the national government or federal government of Mexico. So those precursors are coming in there. They're going up to illicit labs all throughout central and northern Mexico, and then the product is coming across the United States border. So people said, oh, well, how did we get in this position? I thought cocaine was bad. I thought marijuana was the threat. Yes, those things are both bad and still a threat, despite what is out there in the common media or common vernacular. Marijuana is still illegal at the highest level of federal law. It is still a Schedule I, which means it has no legitimate medical purpose or medicinal purpose. But the trend that we've seen is seizures from particular countries that used to lead the world, right? We've all seen Narcos, and who doesn't have Netflix anymore, right? We've seen Narcos. One person in the back is on Netflix. I'll give you my password if you want. But the old story was Miami Vice, right? Fast boats, Testarosas, linen suits, balmy weather in South Florida, and just truckloads and boatloads and Cessna loads of cocaine coming in from Colombia and the Andean region. And that's not the story anymore at all. If you look at the seizure numbers, you can see it's fallen off from those countries. Cultivation numbers have fallen off. And that cocaine's going to Europe. It's not coming to the US. Yes, we still have cocaine here. We still have crack. But the demand is greatly shifted to something else. And the organizations that have driven this demand are in our cities. They're here in Wisconsin. So this map depicts what we call it's consolidated priority organizations, but these are our top leadership cells where they've set up connections domestically. And this is where the cartels work in the US. And that's a pretty full map. And that's describing the 5 biggest cartels in Mexico and showing you where all their shops. And I'm sorry to report that despite our best efforts, they're here in Wisconsin. And they're everywhere in the Midwest. And these organizations, their subordinates are all vying for control across this part of Mexico here. If you have a question, just raise your hand or shout out, and something piques your interest, and I'll do my best to answer. So, the domestic challenge for us is the foothold of these organizations in the U.S. And each cartel has a different representative areas, as I showed you in the previous graphic, but this shows you how many, it's like a heat map of the bad guys. And other than, let me see, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and maybe part of Wyoming, they're everywhere. And I would dare say if I updated that map by year's end, they'd be there too. This I show to compare heroin to fentanyl. Heroin used to be the drug of choice for a large segment of like the opioid consumers. You heard about opioids, you heard about the pill mills, you heard about the pill epidemic. And before there was strict regulation at the federal level and at pretty much every state level now, there was a lot of illicit prescribing of different pharmaceuticals, and people got addicted to that stuff. And when folks lost access to the stuff they could get from pharmacies or doctors, they went to heroin. And the problem with heroin is, it's a plant, you have to grow it, it needs to be fertilized and cared for. Some people play country music for it, some people don't. There's only particular parts of the climate globally where heroin will prosper, right? And almost all our heroin comes from a limited region of Mexico, and mostly from, again, down in the Andean region of South America. We don't see almost any Afghan heroin here domestically. That Afghan heroin, that's going to Ukraine, that's going to Russia, that's going to Central Europe, that's going to Northern Europe, not to the US. The heroin we had here was Mexican. But the cartels, they're a business enterprise. And like everybody, they want to make money. And if they can cut out a middleman, or they can reduce their supply side risk, what are they going to do? They did away with it. So all of a sudden we started seeing less heroin and more of this other stuff. And that other stuff was fentanyl. And the biggest adaptation in their business model was not just the fact that they were now buying precursor chemicals and not growing and transporting, because there's a lot of risk in moving drugs from South America into the Yucatan Peninsula or into the US. Like, big credit to the Coast Guard, US Customs, DEA, and our foreign counterparts down there. You're taking a big risk trying to run a fast boat or a homemade submarine through the Caribbean. But when you cut out all that risk and you just get drugs across the Pacific is enormous. Do I have any Navy veterans in here? Anybody ever float in the Pacific? I was a Marine, I was on a ship in the Pacific, it's bobbing around here. It's enormous. Like trying to find a boat in the Pacific, I don't care, airplanes, sensors, radars, is almost impossible. So that's why you have pills, because the cartels decided that the market in the US was for people who wanted prescription pills. And they are making fentanyl into pills. They're getting a mechanical dye for pill presses to make it look like an oxycodone. So these pills, they're designed, these are M-Box 30s we call them. This is an oxycodone, 30 milligram, very common. Anybody who's had any kind of thoracic procedure, wisdom teeth removed, some kind of surgical follow-up injuries, probably had these at some point in their life. But this is the most widely consumed pill domestically, and these are all fake. These are all fentanyl. So these get transacted on the street. Somebody thinks they're buying an M-Box 30, they take one of these, it's fentanyl, and they're dead. End of story. That's how we have 110,000 overdoses, is this. And these pills are from here. These pills were seized within 50 miles of here. These pills were seized within 100 miles of here. So the domestic, why is this happening, right? The challenge is this transition happened lightning fast before we recognized it, before we could adapt. And it's happening in every single office in DEA. Initially it was localized. This was a problem with the Northeast. Then it was a problem with Appalachia. And then it was a problem with certain cities in the Midwest or the Rust Belt. Now it's everywhere. 5 years ago, maybe 5 offices in DEA reported fentanyl in their threat stream. That's a domestic map of every office in the agency. Every single one of them has reported fentanyl seizures in the last year. DEA seized, I think I have a slide that says this, I think we seized 30 million illegal fentanyl pills in a 6-month period. So people say, what about meth? I still hear about meth, the specter. Where are the meth labs? I remember I used to hear about people blowing up their home with meth labs, and there was this, I worked in Missouri when I first came on the job. Full disclosure, I'm from Missouri, so it was even more terrifying to go back to. Never go back to a place where you're from to do a police job. And I got there, I thought, oh my gosh, am I arresting people I knew? But meth was the big demon there. That's 2002, 2003. They probably seized 50,000 meth labs in Missouri. You know how many meth labs we seized in the state of Wisconsin in the last 2 years? Probably less than 10, maybe 15. Again, cartels, our business models, they adapt. We're not gonna, we've decided, people in the US, you want meth? We'll just make it for you. We'll make it more pure, and we'll sell it for a better price, and we'll make it right across the border, out of the reach of the United States law enforcement. And that's what they're doing. So both purity and seizure numbers have gone up. And now people aren't out breaking into your local farm co-op to steal anhydrous ammonia. They're not stealing batteries to get lithium from Walmart. They're not trying to steal pseudoephedrine from behind the counter at the drugstores. That takes a lot of effort. Again, a lot of exposure. Instead, they can just go get meth for 1/10 of the price from somebody with a connection to Mexico. So that's just capturing what I said. That's total number of labs in the US. This is the year I came on the job right here. So DEA's big push, and this is a messaging thing about the fentanyl, is this message right here. If people aren't consuming a pill that's provided by a pharmacy or a medical practitioner, it must be treated as counterfeit or illicit. And that's kind of my administrator's message. If you can't read that, it's a clear and present public safety, public health, and national security threat. And people say, well, what do you mean by national security threat? Well, think of the ripples in the pond that occur when somebody either enters into addiction or overdoses on fentanyl. And some folks in this room may have known people personally. I've interacted with many people, especially in the last 5 years of my career. But you have grandparents, you have parents, you have sometimes great-grandparents raising juvenile children because some folks are absent. You have healthcare and medical care services dragged down by that. You have law enforcement taxed out, uniform law enforcement taxed out to the max about addressing these challenges. And most of these people in this addiction cycle, they're in like their peak reproductive years. So you're looking at it, that's going to drag on medical and healthcare services for a long time into the future. These are just all sorts of media releases about, how overdoses skyrocketed. They did go up during the pandemic. I don't, can any of us correlate COVID to any sort of data point now? I'm not a data scientist. I'd like to think I am, but I think that's a difficult assessment to make. Maybe 10 years down the road, we can try and attribute some of that stuff. But listen, there was COVID, people died from COVID, there's fentanyl, and people are dying from fentanyl and the fentanyl analogs. By the way, both linked to China and not good. For the camera, it was just humor, thank you. So, this shows you how much these numbers have changed over the year. I mean, 100,000 people, you know, I think maybe 5 years ago that number was like 25 or 50,000, and people would compare it to traffic accidents and gun violence. And now, drug overdoses eclipse everything else combined, right? Like you drive down the highway and you're like, look up at the little marquee, and there's usually a little joke like, you know, if you text, the Packers will lose or something like that. So I swore I was going to make any Packer jokes, but I was so disappointed by Sunday. So that was my one attempt. But you see a little marquee, and then it says like 444 drivers have died in Wisconsin in the last year. But, you know, there's probably been 1,100 people who have died of fentanyl overdoses. And yeah, maybe there was 25 people, or maybe there's 256 murders in Milwaukee, but there's 500 or 600 fatal overdoses. So if you add up all the other things, they still add up to this thing that we are working against and that we should be messaging against. Am I going too long, Chris? Okay. So it is lethal, but I will add just a word of caution in this. There's been a lot of fentanyl exposure in of itself is not going to kill anybody. If you inhale it, if you inject it, if you snort it, that's going to kill you. And even some people can survive that because maybe they have a higher tolerance for opioids, they have a longer drug history, there's body chemistry, composition factors. So that's why you see some people, first time, it's the last time, you know, the people, they survive. Maybe Narcan intervention saves them. It's very hard to predict how that kills people. And some people, listen, the guys that are making this stuff in Mexico, and get to that slide too, that's a lethal dose, by the way, sorry. So, you know, that's just a couple of micrograms, that's, you know, that's like a few grams of salt. I'd say maybe that's I don't know, half a gram less. Okay, so I said like inbox 30s, which is these guys. This is for you all. Like if you can carry this forth, this one pill information, wield it. You said you heard it from me. These are the most common counterfeit pills. OxyContin, right? I said that's the painkiller everybody gets for surgery typically. Adderall, I don't know if any of you saw in the media, there's an Adderall shortage in the US. Disturbing, because I think Merck makes Adderall, or GlaxoSmithKline. So, you know, pharmaceutical companies don't make 1 million pills annually or 10 million. They make hundreds of millions of pills. So there's an Adderall shortage. But again, the Mexican cartels, they're smart. They know what people want, so they've made a pill that is fentanyl that looks like Adderall, and people are taking it out and selling it for $25 on the street. And then the last one, Xanax, alprazolam, super common anti-anxiety medication in the US, probably one of the most highly consumed medications in the US. That's also a fake, and it looks perfect. I think I have a slide that comparison for you. Here we go. Okay. And it's like, every time I get this wrong, so I'm not playing. That's 2 Mbox 30s. One is real, one is fake. How do you know? Okay, I can't remember. Let's see what I embarrassed myself. There you go. Okay, so the top one's a real oxycodone, which you're like, gosh, it doesn't look as crisp. How is that? I mean, that's what we're up against. And mind you, these guys down here, they made 100,000 tablets a week. Those guys up there, they made 1 million tablets a week. And sad, they probably both made $10 million in that week. Okay, this is Xanax. One real, one fake. Nobody wants to go after the last one? All right, fair enough. Okay, so you see, like if you knew what they looked like before, and you maybe you're a pharmacist or pharmacy tech, maybe you have a chance of getting that right, but not the folks that are buying these. So this is a medical grade fentanyl laboratory, right? This is what it should look like. Pressurized vessels, steel decking, white suited people who aren't depicted here through there. This is what they look like down within 5 miles of the United States and Mexico. And I would venture to guess that there's probably 1,000 of these within 100 miles of the US border. And I like the outdoors, like the stars, like the grass. Think of the environmental impact that that's having, like all this solvents and other chemicals just discarded into the environment. Just shocking. So this, I show this sign, you're like, well, how's it get across the border? So that right there on the shelf in our laboratory, that's 1.2 million pills. So you take a void in any car, and every car's got a void somewhere, either intentional or manufactured. And you can mold these, you can shape them, right? And dogs can detect them, but not as easily and not as rapidly as a lot of the other narcotics, because there's no organic compound here. So if you've got chemical additives there that the dog may not be conditioned to or trained to, it can be super tough. And the volume, I'm talking at the ports of entry, right, where they're searching, port of entry in the United States. Anybody been to any of the ports of entries across to Mexico by vehicle? Right? If you've done it at either 8 a.m. or 5 p.m. on any weekday, you're going across the border with 400,000 cars into San Diego or El Paso. So how could you ever expect to search 500,000 cars? You can't. Pure odds game. So if they send 50 cars through and 49 make it, that's 49 million pills that got into Arizona and now are on their way to Wisconsin and Minnesota. And just some more numbers. I think we all get how intimidating the number is. Yeah, so again, just in a few years, so few of these pills, they were actually real pharmaceutical pills that we were intercepting, or they were stolen from a pharmacy or stolen from a doctor's office. And now that's telling you that half the pills or more that we see, or almost half, are fake. And then again, the dosage goes up, right? Makes each pill more lethal. And then, I'm just talking about some final thoughts here, is access, right? The way in which we access stuff via phone, right? I'm getting a good example of it, right? Yeah. Is you ordering up over there? He made you do it. No, I'm just kidding. So, the internet marketplace, the dark net, that's kind of gone, right? Silk Road, that's kind of the way the dinosaur, kids don't need that stuff. They're using Snapchat, and they're using Instagram, and they're using Facebook, and they're sending all these coded messages to each other, or to a source down in Milwaukee, and they're driving from these outlying rural communities, high school kids, and they're driving down the inner city with somebody, a friend introducing them to a friend, and this is how they're ordering up. And there's no way, we're never, listen, I'm 47, and generationally, it's impossible for me to keep up with this stuff. The pace of that, it's an adaptation, so order, buy, consume, die. So that's, let me see, I got anything else here? Let me make sure I got nothing too. Yeah, okay, so that's, I'll wrap it up now. Listen, I hope this has been interesting and not too daunting. I will say in closure, yes, the threat is real, and I recently saw a Center of Disease Control slide that said if we don't do something, that the numbers, which are hovering about 110,000 annually, in 5 years could crest 500,000. And that's like a shocking number of people to die from something that is preventable through messaging, preventable through notification, and through community interaction. And I really believe that this is stuff that can be viral in a positive way, and you folks going forward, and Chris, thanks really for the work you do, going forward and messaging to the young people in your lives, and just having a conversation. Who here remembers This Is Your Brain on Drugs? Everybody remembers that. Everybody. The best anti-drug messaging campaign in history, because here we all are 25 years later, 30 years later, 40 years later from when that came out, and it still resonates. And that is the kind of impact we need to have, because that DARE program, it changed a generation in a positive way. And there's just there's a lack of that. And it can only citizens, I believe only citizens that can make that change. So thank you.
You got a patrol later, or you just going back to your office? Oh, you gotta take one for your bride.
Thank you, John. Before I go on with the short Enrique video I have a gift card winner. If you can get out your green ticket. It is number 918075. It's the green ticket. 918075. No winners? All right. At this time, I would like to play a short video about who and what Enrique Camaren was. Each year when we do this award, I am always asked why we give out this award. This video will tells all about the life of the man who inspired this award and the Red Ribbon campaign. Oh yes, duh. I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself. First, we're going to give out the EMT awards. Dave Dacono, please come up.
I saw it on your agenda.
Thanks, Christy. Yeah, I kind of looked at her tenure, and she had this whole agenda here, what was going on and when, and I was before them. So I'm David Como, I'm Pat's Solid Ruler up here, and I do appreciate Christy letting me present this award for the First Responder EMT Firefighter of the Year Award, as I am one of them, and I really do appreciate this. So what I'd like to do first of all is invite our recipients up here. John Hodley, if you could please come up here, and Chris Abel, could you please come up here? Brian Luce is another individual that should win on this award. I have not talked to him, but he'll be getting something in the mail. So, or I'll actually deliver something to the Sheriff's Department. So, on July 30th, 2022, you guys all responded to a report of a man who was unresponsive and not breathing in his car on Highway 26 near Junction Road in the town of Klamath, Dodge County. The CLR Fire Department and first responders, Juneau EMS, Watertown EMS, and Dodge County Sheriff's Office were all dispatched to the scene. When they arrived, you guys witnessed other citizens assisting a man performing CPR and immediately jumped in to assist without hesitation, providing an AED, automatic external defibrillator, and 4 AED shots were delivered to this patient. When the sheriff arrived, he noted that you guys had taken control of the scene and ensured that everything that could be done within your training was done. Eventually, the patient became conscious and survived because of your efforts of all involved. You all utilized your training and experience to save the life of one of our citizens, John Ebling. On behalf of the Watertown Elks Lodge, I'm proud to have people like you that are willing to step up and respond to incidents such as this. You amplify what it means to fulfill the mission of safeguarding the lives of our citizens and use core values of teamwork, leadership to service this, to accomplish their goals of saving lives. Thank you for everything you do and your excellent work. Please accept a certificate of appreciation from the Watertown Elks Lodge for your heroic actions. Like I said, these guys are true to my heart. They're part of the CLR Fire Department up in northern Dodge County or central Dodge County. I work with these guys all the time, and I had the honor of nominating these guys for this award because it's very, very important, and you guys saved a life, and that's really a meaningful thing, and I appreciate that. All right? Thank you, guys. Chris is not here with anybody. Chris's wife was going to come. She kind of bowed out. But John is here with his wife, Sherry, and their son, Chad. So they came for this awards presentation. So.
All right, well, pictures are being taken. I will go back to where I was supposed to, if I read my own timeline. At this time, I would like to play a short video about who and what Enrique Camaren was. Each year when we do this award, I am always asked why we give out this award. This short video tells about the life of the man who inspired this award and the Red Ribbon campaign. On your table are red ribbons. These are just a small way for all of us to honor the man who gave his life in the attempt to stop the illegal use and sale of harmful drugs.
I promise it's my lack of ability, not the video.
do remember are my three boys, as little as the two younger ones can possibly remember.
Motivator for all three of us, and he also was a stern dad, but at the same time he was loving.
What sort of a nation is America? The kind that produces heroes like Enrique Camaren Award and many others who gave their lives in the battle against illegal drugs. We're the kind of country that will pull together and sacrifice to rid ourselves of the menace of illegal drug use.
They brought Kiki home in March of 1985. Brought him home to his family and his country with honors. A DEA special agent, he had been abducted, tortured, and murdered in Mexico by Mexican drug traffickers. 2 full decades have passed since then. But time has not dimmed the memory of Enrique Kiki Camarena's terrible and savage death, of the events that followed, or, most importantly, of the man himself. The child who grew into Kiki Camarena, the man, was born in Mexico, but at the age of 9, moved with his family to the California border town of Calexico. A high school basketball and football player, he also worked on the yearbook, was voted best all-around senior, and found the woman he would share his life with.
Very tall, always walked with his head high, very athletic, very bright. And the reason I say that is because I had to study a whole lot harder than he did, and he would just come up with flying colors with his grades.
After high school, Kiki worked his way through college, graduating with a degree in criminal justice. He enlisted in the Marines, served his tour, and came home to join, first, the Calexico Fire Department, and then, when there was an opening, the town's police department. But Kiki Camarena wanted to do more. And so, in 1974, at the age of 26, he became a special agent with the year-old Drug Enforcement Administration, the federal government's newly created lead agency in the war on illicit drugs. It was a job he was born to do.
He admired the work that the agents did. And now I know more than ever that he was extremely good at it, not only because he spoke the Spanish language, but because he could reach out to these people, both good and bad. And he could befriend them in such a way that it was amazing how well he did. And I think that's why he was such a great agent.
By 1980, Camarena was a husband and the father of 3 young sons. Professionally, he was a decorated 7-year DEA veteran, headed for the organization's Guadalajara, Mexico field office. It was a dangerous assignment, and the whole family was aware of it.
I was aware of the dangers because, although they didn't tell me, my parents didn't tell me much about the true dangers that were there. I could see the responses to it. I wasn't allowed to cross the street. I wasn't allowed to be away from eye shot in front of from the house. Most of the time I was inside with my friends, or we'd been inside their house, but I wasn't out on the street much.
The danger was real, and it struck home on February the 7th, 1985. On his way to meet Mika for lunch, 37-year-old Kiki Camarena was abducted. He would never see his wife or family again.
He was approached by 5 men outside of the building, and I understand his head was covered so we wouldn't be able to identify him. He was shoved into a small Volkswagen car that was parked in the street. and they took him away. He was kidnapped and he was never seen alive again.
Waiting for 30 days for them to find him was the hardest thing I've ever experienced. Hoping. And literally asking agents, will he still be an agent?
What happened to Kiki Camaren inspired Elaine Shannon to write a book about it called Desperados.
It was a story about corruption. It was a story about betrayal. As I started to get more and more information, and then as Camarena's body turned up, and it was clear that he'd been murdered, and then as we learned that he had been tortured, and then as we learned that he had been tortured by people who were connected to the security services in Mexico, it took on a really ugly dimension and a fascinating story. There was betrayal at every level.
The death of Kiki Camaren shocked the Drug Enforcement Administration, but it also galvanized the organization from top to bottom. All of DEA's resources were committed to bringing his killers to justice.
If the evil empire, if you will, can attack a U.S. person assigned in a foreign country and believe that they could attack that person with impunity, then every U.S. person assigned to every embassy throughout the world would become a target for that type of terrorist activity. So Kiki's loss was more than a loss for DEA. It potentially could have been a serious blow to all of the men and women who decide to serve their country in working in foreign assignments.
We were going to find, identify, and prosecute the people responsible. There were a lot of roadblocks, but the people that were working it were dedicated to actually making it happen, to putting those people to trial.
The murder of a federal agent, a DEA agent, or any federal officer of the United States government is a crime against the laws of the United States, no matter where in the world it's committed. And so it was very important, particularly in this case, that the United States government, with applying the DEA investigation of Operation Leyenda, that we bring a prosecution against everybody that was we had evidence of that had been that had conspired or been complicit in the kidnapping and murder of Kiki Camaren.
Interest in every aspect of the Kiki Camaren case was overwhelming. It touched hearts and minds across the country. But obviously, nowhere was the loss felt more deeply or more profoundly than by the Camaren family.
When all this is going on, I remember thinking that I had to be strong. You know, I was 11 years old, and I remembered that whenever my dad would leave for a training or for a trip or for anything, because sometimes he took trips on work-related stuff, he'd tell me, "Remember while I'm gone, there's a man in the house." You know, when we thought I wasn't coming home, I remember thinking, "Can't come out of the house."
It was very hard not to be able to see him for the last time. Accepting that reality was very difficult. It was so difficult that I'll never forget going up that ramp into the seat casket. And Agent Wallace specifically telling me, "You cannot open the casket."
The death of any law enforcement officer in the line of duty is a tragedy. But what befell Kiki Camaren, the brutality and callousness of it, seemed to strike a more sensitive nerve, to touch people at a deeper level. And they haven't forgotten. In March of 1985, Kiki came home to his family and his country. The circumstances of his death were the focus of a book and a television movie. He is fully remembered in his hometown, and impressive as all that is, his most vivid legacy is the Red Ribbon program, which was launched that very month and year to honor his work and his memory.
go back from the very beginning, because once the people saw the celebration in California, spontaneously parent groups all over the nation started wearing the red ribbon and doing simple things with school children and in communities. And then in 1986, Miami and San Diego both created a whole community-wide campaign where you involved all the sectors of the community and the Red Ribbon Campaign.
Like many positive things, the roots of Red Ribbon Week are found in something negative. The fate of DEA Special Agent Enrique Camaren. But it is in this affirming and humane endeavor that his living legacy is richly preserved. Kiki would have been very proud.
On March 5th, 1985, the war against drugs started over. The story of Kiki's kidnapping, torture, and murder is a defining event in DEA's history. With Kiki's death, our country changed. The way Americans view drugs changed, and DEA responded, resolving to fight with an even greater commitment for what Kiki gave his life to achieve. New determination was born on that day. The life of this brave husband and father inspired Americans to keep drugs out of our communities and away from our children. The year he was killed, the Red Ribbon Campaign was created. This is an event that is now at the heart and soul of this agency. Every day at DEA, we live Kiki's legacy, standing on the front line, attacking the culture of indifference, and creating a drug-free future for our children. We remember how much he gave, mindful we cannot give less.
I would like for my brother to be remembered as the way he was, smiling all the time, generous. He was always a down-to-earth person.
I want people to remember my dad as a person who dedicated himself to law enforcement, who dedicated himself to stopping drugs from ruining people's lives.
I would like them to remember him as a great citizen, as a good father. I would like others to remember Kiki would be with a smile.
This was the easiest way for me to explain to everybody what Enrique Camaren Award is about and what that man gave to our country. Each year, we nominate an officer at each lodge for the Enrique Camaren Award. This year, our candidate is Officer Hensley. We actually have two, and K9 Chance. Officer Hensley has been a police officer for the Watertown Police Department since January of 2015. He was selected to be the K9 handler for the Watertown Police Department in 2018. He was deployed overseas for a year and then came back and was paired and trained with K9 Chance in fall of 2019. They have been in service together for 3 years, working third shift patrol. Together, Officer Hensley and K9 Chance have been responsible for 108 vehicle searches, over 80 drug arrests, over 3.5 pounds of narcotics to include cocaine, MDMA, methamphetamine, LSD, and I can't say that word, psilocybin, which is mushrooms, and heroin. Over $7,000 has been seized in drug-related investigations. 19 assists to outside agencies, primarily Jefferson and Dodge. Officer Henley has committed his time to being called in while off duty to respond to the need for a canine. He and K9 Chance have been called in 57 times for a total of 126 hours. This exemplifies Officer Henley's dedication to helping stop the flow of illegal drugs in the community. In addition to call-outs, Officer Henley also does community demonstrations, and during these demonstrations, Officer Henley talks about the K-9 program and brings awareness to the attendees of the various drugs commonly seen in Watertown. We at the Watertown Police Department recognize Officer Hensley's hard work and dedication to making Watertown a drug-free community and support his nomination for the Enrique Camaren Award. This was given by Police Chief Kaminsky, the nomination, and I was lucky enough during, I believe it was in June, to be able to interview Officer Henley and Chance on my cable access channel ICAN. I thought it would be fun to show them in action before I present them with their award. One minute, please.
There's a chance.
Talk to her nicely. He's taking a nap. Okay, now he's got to do my job. Everybody have enough to eat? There's still food? No, there is no food. Okay. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation tonight. I know it's been a little long, but I wanted to share everything that I could. I would have liked to have seen a lot more people here, especially our lodge members. But now I have to dance.
I'm starting to like this. She was thinking. Excellent. That's good. I don't know what this is.
I don't know what you're saying, Paul. Oh, another ticket?
50-50.
Oh,
Last call.
last call for 50-50. Anybody for 50-50? Last call.
I gotta have some.
Welcome back to our second half of our show. We have two special guests today, Officer Jeffrey Hensley and Chance. Welcome.
Thanks, service.
Okay. I enjoyed interviewing Officer Henley and Chance. They both have given a lot of their time and commitment to the eradication of illegal drugs in our community. The Watertown Elks Drug Awareness Program and myself are proud to present these awards to Officer Hensley and Officer K-9 Chance. Officer Hensley and Chance, would you please come up and receive your awards? Everyone please stand and show your gratitude for what these two and all of you.
Officer Henry, thank you for all you've done for our community.
get rid of drugs and avoid the situations we face on the streets. And we really appreciate all your guys' support as first responders. Thank you very much. This means a lot, especially knowing